My name is Evelyn Carter, and if you asked anyone in the business world to describe me, they'd probably say the same thing. Brilliant. Cold. Impossible to impress. At 29, I had already become the youngest CEO in my company's history. I built my career with discipline, sleepless nights, and one simple rule: never let emotions interfere with success. Love, relationships, marriage, they were distractions. I watched brilliant women throw away promotions for romance. I watched talented executives lose focus because they couldn't separate work from feelings. That would never be me. I wasn't lonely. I simply had priorities. One Friday evening, after signing a multi-million-dollar partnership, my clients insisted on celebrating. "Come on, Evelyn," one of them laughed. "Just one drink." One drink became three. Three became. I honestly couldn't remember. The hotel bar was filled with music and expensive perfume. I excused myself for fresh air before my head exploded. That's when I bumped into him. Literally. "Oh, I'm sorry." A warm hand caught my arm before I lost my balance. "I'm the one who should apologize." His voice was calm, gentle. I looked up. He was ridiculously handsome. Messy black hair, dark eyes, a simple white shirt with the sleeves rolled up. Not wearing an expensive suit. Not trying to impress anyone. He looked younger than me. Much younger. "You've had too much champagne," he smiled. "I can take care of myself." I never said you couldn't. That smile irritated me. Because it was impossible to hate. "I'll call you a taxi." "I don't need one. You can't even walk in a straight line." "I can." I took exactly 3 confident steps. Then my heel slipped. Again. He caught me. Again. He laughed softly. "I'll pretend that didn't happen." I rolled my eyes. "I don't even know your name." "You don't need to. That's mysterious. It's practical." He tilted his head. "I like practical." I don't remember every detail after that. Only flashes. Rain outside. His jacket over my shoulders. A hotel room. Talking until sunrise. Laughing. For the first time in years. I laughed without thinking about tomorrow. When I woke up, the sunlight burned through the curtains. My head hurt. I turned. The other side of the bed was empty. There was no note. No phone number. No message. I stared at the ceiling for a long time. Then I smiled to myself. Good. No strings. No expectations. Just one unforgettable night. Exactly the way I wanted it. I showered. Put on my suit. Walked out of the hotel. And buried that memory where it belonged. In the past. Or so I thought. 3 weeks later. Monday morning. My company was interviewing candidates for a new management trainee program. I rarely attended interviews. Human resources handled them. But for some reason, I walked into the conference room. "Good morning," I said. The candidate stood up. Our eyes met. My heartbeat stopped. It was him. The stranger from that night. He smiled as if fate had been waiting for this moment. "Good morning." He paused just long enough to make me nervous. Quote. CEO Carter. My face remained expressionless. Inside, my world had just turned upside down. He looked even better than I remembered. And then he delivered the sentence that would completely destroy my peaceful life. "I hope you'll consider hiring me." The moment our eyes met in the interview room, I forced myself to remain calm. "Mr." He smiled politely. "Daniel Hayes." As if we'd never met before. As if we hadn't spent one unforgettable night together. Not a single hint. Not a single inappropriate glance. He answered every interview question professionally, confidently, and with surprising intelligence. When the interview ended, the HR director whispered beside me, "He's probably the strongest candidate we've had this year." I stared at his resume. 25 years old. Graduated at the top of his class. Fluent in 3 languages. Perfect internship records. 4 years younger than me. Without another word, I signed the approval. "Welcome to Carter Group." For just a second, I noticed relief flicker across his eyes. Within a week, Daniel became the most popular employee in the office. Girls from marketing suddenly volunteered to deliver documents. Women from accounting found excuses to visit his department. Even the usually serious HR manager smiled whenever he walked by. Daniel, would you like to have lunch together? Daniel, can you help me with this report? Daniel, are you free after work? He answered everyone with the same gentle smile, but never promised anyone anything. From my office on the top floor, I watched everything through the glass walls. It shouldn't have bothered me. It didn't. Right. One rainy afternoon, I skipped lunch because of endless meetings. By 4 o'clock, I realized my coffee had gone cold. My stomach growled. A few minutes later, my secretary entered. Miss Carter. Yes. I found this outside your office. She placed a paper bag on my desk. Inside was a warm sandwich. A cup of coffee. Exactly how I always ordered it. No name. No note. Who left it? I don't know. The security camera showed only someone wearing a baseball cap. The next morning, the elevator suddenly stopped between floors. The lights flickered. Several employees panicked. I remained silent. I hated small spaces. No one knew that. Not even my closest colleagues. My breathing became uneven. Then a calm voice spoke beside me. Everyone, please step back a little. Daniel. He stood between me and the crowd without looking directly at me. It's okay, he said softly. We'll be out in a minute. He wasn't talking to everyone. He was talking to me. Somehow, he remembered. From that single night. He remembered I had admitted, half asleep, that elevators made me anxious after being trapped in one as a child. He never mentioned it. Never exposed my weakness. When the elevator doors finally opened, he simply walked away before anyone noticed. No thanks. No conversation. Nothing. Days turned into weeks. The mysterious kindness continued. Whenever I worked late, a fresh cup of coffee appeared. Whenever I skipped dinner, food arrived anonymously. Whenever meetings became overwhelming, the presentation files were somehow already organized before I asked. No one knew who was helping me. Except, I had a feeling. One evening, I finally saw him. He quietly placed a cup of hot tea outside my office door. Before he could leave, I opened the door. He froze. So, I crossed my arms. It was you. Daniel looked embarrassed. I'm sorry. I never asked you to do any of this. I know. Then why? He looked at me for several seconds before answering. Because I know you don't like owing people anything. So I made sure you never had to thank me. For the first time in years. I didn't know what to say. The next morning, rumors exploded across the company. Did you hear? Daniel rejected another confession. That's the 5th one this month. Is he secretly dating someone? The women in the office couldn't understand it. What none of them noticed was that every time Daniel walked past my office, he never looked inside. Not because he didn't want to, but because he knew. One careless glance could expose everything. And yet, every silent act of care pulled my guarded heart a little closer to him. I kept telling myself it meant nothing. Until one afternoon, a stunning woman in a designer dress stepped into the lobby, carrying a bouquet of white roses. She smiled confidently at the receptionist. I'm here to see Daniel Hayes. Then she added, loud enough for the entire office to hear. Tell him his fiancée has come to pick him up. The office fell completely silent. And for the first time, my heart skipped for a reason that had nothing to do with business. The entire office fell silent. Every pair of eyes turned toward the elegant woman standing in the lobby. She was breathtaking. Long chestnut hair, a tailored cream dress, diamond earrings that sparkled beneath the lights. She held a bouquet of white roses and smiled with complete confidence. I'm here for Daniel Hayes. The receptionist blinked. Do you have an appointment? The woman laughed softly. No. She glanced around the office before saying, I'm his fiancé. Gasps echoed through the room. From the second floor, I could see everything through the glass railing. For some reason, my fingers tightened around the coffee cup. Fiancé. Of course. Someone like him would already belong to someone. Why should that surprise me? It shouldn't. Then why did my chest suddenly feel so heavy? A few moments later, Daniel walked into the lobby. The woman smiled brightly. Daniel. Instead of hugging her, he frowned. What are you doing here? I came to surprise you. I told you not to come to my workplace. Her smile slowly disappeared. But Aunt Sophia said, I don't care what my mother said. The entire office froze. Mother. Fiancé. What was happening? Daniel took a deep breath. Then he turned toward everyone watching. I'm sorry. He smiled awkwardly. There seems to be a misunderstanding. He looked at the woman beside him. Emily. I've told you this since we were children. We're not engaged. Emily bit her lip. Our parents arranged it. They arranged it. I never agreed. Without another word, Daniel walked away, leaving Emily standing alone with tears in her eyes. The office exploded with gossip. So she's not his fiancé. An arranged marriage. I feel bad for her. By lunchtime, everyone was discussing Daniel. Except me. I buried myself in work. Why did I feel relieved? I hated that feeling. That evening, I stayed late again. Almost everyone had gone home. The city lights shimmered outside my office window. I rubbed my temples. A knock came at the door. Come in. Daniel stepped inside. He held no coffee, no food, just a file. This is tomorrow's presentation. He placed it on my desk. Then turned to leave. Wait. He stopped. Without looking back, I asked quietly. Was she really your fiancé? A long silence followed. Finally. No. But your family's. My family wants me to marry her. And you? He smiled sadly. I can't. Why? For the first time, he looked directly into my eyes. Because my heart chose someone else. My heartbeat quickened. I immediately looked away. That's your personal business. It is. He nodded. But I wanted you to know the truth. Before I could respond, he quietly left. Days passed. I tried to ignore him. Avoid him. Forget the way he looked at me. Then something unexpected happened. Our biggest competitor, Blackwood Corporation, announced a $1 billion bid for the same international project we had spent months preparing. Losing this contract would cost my company everything. An emergency executive meeting was called. The board argued for hours. No solution seemed good enough. Then a calm voice came from the back of the room. If you'll allow me. Everyone turned. Daniel. The youngest person in the room. An intern. One of the directors laughed. Since when do interns attend executive meetings? Daniel answered politely. Since your security team accidentally sent the meeting invitation to my email. The room chuckled. Even I couldn't hide a faint smile. Fine, I said. You have 5 minutes. Daniel walked confidently to the screen. Within minutes, he identified a critical weakness in Blackwood's proposal that none of our senior executives had noticed. The room fell silent. One director whispered, That's impossible. Another muttered, Who is this kid? I looked at Daniel with new eyes. That was when I realized something unsettling. The man who had spent weeks quietly bringing me coffee might be hiding a far greater secret than I had ever imagined. The conference room was silent. No one spoke. No one even blinked. Daniel stood confidently in front of the screen, explaining every flaw in Blackwood Corporation's proposal as if he had designed it himself. Our competitor is expecting us to lower our price, he said calmly. If we do, we'll lose. One of the senior directors frowned. Then what's your solution? Daniel clicked to the next slide. We don't compete on price. We compete on innovation. He proposed a strategy so bold that every executive exchanged shocked glances. When he finished, the room remained silent for several seconds. Finally, I spoke. Implement his plan. One director immediately objected. Miss Carter, he's only an intern. I looked around the table. Then perhaps the rest of you should ask yourselves why an intern just solved a problem that none of you could. No one dared argue again. 3 weeks later, the results arrived. Carter Group had won the contract. The company erupted in celebration. Champagne flowed. Employees applauded. The board praised my leadership. But only I knew the truth. Without Daniel, we would have lost. That evening, I asked my secretary to invite him to my office. When he entered, he smiled politely. You wanted to see me. I stood by the window, looking at the city lights. Why did you apply here? He was quiet. Out of all the companies in the country, why mine? He looked at me for a long moment. Then answered honestly. Because I hoped I'd see you again. I turned slowly. You knew exactly who I was that night, didn't you? Quote. Yes. So meeting me wasn't an accident. It was. I didn't know you'd be at that hotel. But after that night, he lowered his eyes. I couldn't forget you. I laughed softly. For the first time in years. Not because something was funny. Because I didn't know how to react. Daniel, I'm 30. You're 26. You work for me. I don't believe in office relationships. He nodded. I know. I never expected anything. I only wanted the chance to stand where you could see me. Before I could answer, someone knocked violently on the door. The chairman of the board rushed in. His face was pale. Miss Carter, we have a serious problem. The confidential bidding documents have been leaked. The room fell silent. What? The media is already reporting it. And, he hesitated. The leaked files were downloaded using. He looked directly at Daniel. Quote. Daniel Hayes, employee account. Every eye turned toward him. The security guards entered the office. One stepped forward. Mr. Hayes, please come with us. I stared at Daniel. Tell me this isn't true. He didn't defend himself. He didn't panic. He simply looked into my eyes and said quietly, I didn't do it. Then why aren't you explaining yourself? He smiled sadly. Because if I reveal the truth now, you'll be in even greater danger. Before I could stop him, the guards escorted him away. Standing alone in my office, I watched the elevator doors close. For the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of losing $1 billion contract. I was afraid of losing the only man who had ever quietly loved me without asking for anything in return. I watched the elevator doors close. For the first time in years, I ignored the ringing phone on my desk. The contract, the shareholders, the media, none of it mattered. Only one question echoed in my mind. Why didn't he defend himself? The next morning, every news headline was the same. Carter Group employee suspected of leaking confidential files. Employees whispered whenever I walked past. Wasn't he the CEO's favorite intern? I heard he was a corporate spy. I knew he was too perfect. I said nothing. But deep inside, I refused to believe it. Bring me the security footage, I ordered. The head of IT hesitated. Miss Carter, the files were downloaded using Daniel's account. I didn't ask whose account was used. I asked for the footage. Hours later, I sat alone in the surveillance room. One video. One hallway. 2:13 a.m. Daniel entered the office. He typed his password. Opened the confidential files. Everything matched the evidence. Then, the camera briefly flickered. Just 2 seconds. When the image returned, someone else was standing behind Daniel. A man wearing black gloves. His face hidden beneath a cap. The stranger injected something into Daniel's neck. Daniel collapsed onto the desk. The masked man calmly used Daniel's fingerprint to unlock the computer. My heart stopped. They framed him. Before I could alert security. The technician beside me whispered, "Miss Carter, the original recording disappeared." What? The version you're watching came from a hidden backup server. Someone deleted the real footage. Someone inside the company was helping the culprit. That evening, I went to the detention center. Daniel looked exhausted. Yet the moment he saw me, he smiled. "You shouldn't be here." I sat across from him. "I know you were framed." His smile faded. "You saw the video. Why didn't you tell anyone?" He looked away. "Because the man behind this is someone you trust." "Who is he?" Daniel remained silent. "Tell me. If I say his name without proof, he'll destroy your company before sunrise." I slammed my hand against the table. "I'm your CEO." He smiled gently. "No. Right now. You're just Evelyn. And I'm trying to protect you." I felt my eyes sting. "I don't need protection. You've always protected yourself," he whispered. "But everyone has a limit." Just then, a guard hurried toward the visiting room. "Miss Carter, you need to leave immediately." "Why?" "There's been an accident at Carter Group." I raced back to headquarters. Smoke billowed from the executive floor. The fire alarm screamed. Firefighters surrounded the building. My office had been set on fire. The only room damaged in the entire building was mine. The room containing every document related to the data leak investigation. Someone wasn't just trying to ruin my company. They were trying to erase the truth. As I stood frozen, my phone vibrated. An unknown number. One message. "Stop investigating. The next fire won't be in your office. It'll be at your home." My blood ran cold. Whoever was behind this had just declared war. I couldn't sleep that night. The anonymous message kept replaying in my mind. "The next fire won't be in your home." For years, I had faced ruthless competitors, hostile takeovers, and billion-dollar negotiations without fear. But this was different. Someone wasn't targeting my company. They were targeting me. The next morning, my assistant rushed into my office. "Miss Carter, the board has voted." I looked up. "They've decided to terminate Daniel Hayes immediately. And they're also asking you to step down temporarily while the investigation continues." I smiled bitterly. So they've already chosen someone to blame. An hour later, I walked into the boardroom. The chairman stood. "For the company's reputation, we must sacrifice one employee." I looked around the room. Every director avoided my eyes. Then, I spoke quietly. "I refuse." The room fell silent. "If Daniel leaves this company as a criminal, I'll resign as CEO." Gasps echoed across the room. The chairman slammed his hand on the table. "Have you lost your mind?" "No. I finally decided to trust someone." That afternoon, Daniel was released on bail. When he stepped outside the detention center, he froze. I was waiting, leaning against my car. He walked toward me. "You shouldn't have done that." "I know. You could lose everything." I opened the passenger door. "Get in." Instead of taking him home, I drove to the quiet beach where we had walked after that unforgettable night months ago. The waves rolled gently onto the shore. Neither of us spoke for several minutes. Finally, Daniel broke the silence. "Why?" I stared at the ocean. "Because I believe you." He laughed softly. "That's a dangerous decision. I've made bigger ones." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small silver key. "I've wanted to give you this for a long time." "What is it?" "A safety deposit box. Inside is everything. The evidence. The names. The reason they framed me." I frowned. "If you already have proof, why didn't you use it?" He looked at me with eyes full of regret. "Because opening that box will also reveal who I really am." Before I could ask another question, 3 black SUVs sped toward the beach. They stopped only a few meters away. 8 men in dark suits stepped out. The man in front bowed respectfully. Young master. Daniel closed his eyes. So, they found me. My heart skipped. Young master. Who were these people? The elderly man stepped forward. Sir, your grandfather has suffered a heart attack. The family requests your immediate return. I looked at Daniel in confusion. You never told me. He gave me an apologetic smile. I wasn't an ordinary intern. My full name is Daniel Hayes Ashford. The Ashford family owns Ashford Global. I stared at him. Ashford Global. The multinational conglomerate worth hundreds of billions of dollars. The company that had quietly invested in industries all over the world. The family whose heirs almost never appeared in public. He wasn't just younger than me. He wasn't just brilliant. He had been hiding the identity of one of the richest heirs in the world. Then he looked at me with the same gentle smile he had worn the night we first met. I never wanted you to fall in love with my name. I only hoped. One day, you might fall in love with me. At that exact moment, one of the bodyguards shouted, Sir. Another black car was racing toward them at terrifying speed. It wasn't slowing down. It was aiming directly at Daniel. The black sedan accelerated. It wasn't trying to stop. It was trying to kill. Daniel, I screamed. Without thinking, I ran toward him. He turned just in time to see the car charging across the sand. In one swift movement, he wrapped his arms around me and threw both of us to the ground. Bang! The sedan crashed into one of the Ashford family's SUVs, sending metal and glass flying everywhere. Bodyguards rushed forward. The driver stumbled out, trying to escape. But before he could take 2 steps, bang! A gunshot echoed across the beach. The driver collapsed. Another sniper had silenced him. The only person who could reveal the mastermind was dead. Daniel pulled me behind the wrecked SUV. Are you hurt? I shook my head, my heart pounding. What is happening? His expression darkened. This isn't just about Carter Group anymore. They've started eliminating witnesses. The elderly butler stepped closer. Young master. The board of Ashford Global has already discovered the truth. Daniel frowned. What truth? The attack on Carter Group was ordered by someone inside the Ashford family. I stared at him. What? The butler nodded gravely. They wanted you to return home. They knew you would never abandon Miss Carter unless she was in danger. Daniel's fists tightened. So they used her to force me back. That night, we flew to the Ashford estate. The mansion looked more like a palace than a home. Marble staircases, crystal chandeliers, portraits of generations of the Ashford family lined the walls. At the end of the grand hallway stood an elderly man in a wheelchair. His eyes were sharp despite his frail body. My grandson. So you finally came home. Daniel's voice was cold. You almost got Evelyn killed. The old man sighed. I didn't order that. But I know who did. Before anyone could speak again, the grand doors opened. A man in his early 30s entered. Tall. Elegant. His smile was flawless. He looked at Daniel as if greeting an old friend. Welcome home, little brother. I looked from Daniel to the stranger. Their eyes. Their features. They looked alike. Daniel whispered one name. Adrian. The room suddenly felt colder. The old man closed his eyes. He's your cousin. The acting vice president of Ashford Global. And the man who will lose everything if Daniel becomes the next chairman. Adrian smiled politely. Evelyn, it's an honor. I've heard so much about you. His voice was calm. Too calm. Then he leaned closer to me and whispered so only I could hear. If you truly care about Daniel, leave him. Because everyone who stays by his side dies. A chill ran down my spine. He stepped back as though nothing had happened. Smiling. Perfect. Dangerous. For the first time, I realized our greatest enemy wasn't a rival company. It was someone sitting at the Ashford family's dinner table. I couldn't sleep. Not because I was afraid, But because Adrian's words kept echoing in my head. The night you met Daniel wasn't an accident. No, it couldn't be. That night had been random. A business dinner. Too much champagne. A stranger who happened to help me. Hadn't it? The next morning, Daniel knocked on my guest room door. I found something. His face was unusually serious. We walked into his grandfather's private study. The old man was waiting. On the desk lay a thick, worn-out file. Across the cover, in black letters, were two names. Project Phoenix. Carter Group, Ashford Global. My heart skipped a beat. Daniel's grandfather sighed deeply. This project began 5 years ago. It was meant to merge our companies. I frowned. What does that have to do with me? He looked at me with guilt in his eyes. Everything. He slid an old photograph across the desk. I picked it up. It was taken at an international business conference. Standing beside my late father was Daniel's father. Both men were smiling. They were best friends, the old man said. They dreamed of building the largest business alliance in the world. But before the agreement was signed, both died within 3 months of each other. I stared at the picture. My father died in a car accident. The old man shook his head. That's what everyone was told. Silence. Then he whispered. It wasn't an accident. My hands trembled. No. They were murdered. Daniel looked at me in disbelief. Grandfather. Why are we only hearing this now? Because the person responsible is still inside this family. At that moment, the study door burst open. A young woman rushed in. She wore jeans, sneakers, and carried a laptop under one arm. She looked no older than 23. Daniel. She stopped when she saw me. Oh, you must be Evelyn. She smiled brightly. I'm Chloe, Daniel's cousin. Unlike Adrian, her smile felt genuine. She immediately plugged her laptop into the television. I hacked into the old Ashford archives. Daniel sighed. You really shouldn't say that out loud. She grinned. Too late. The screen lit up. Security footage. A luxury hotel. The same hotel where Daniel and I had met. The date matched perfectly. I felt my pulse quicken. The video showed me entering the hotel lobby after the client dinner. Then, Daniel entered from another entrance. Neither of us looked at each other. We had never met before. Just as I remembered. Then another figure appeared. Adrian. He spoke briefly to a hotel manager before disappearing. Minutes later, the receptionist approached me. Miss Carter. Your suite has been changed. I frowned. My room was changed. Chloe nodded. Without your knowledge. She clicked again. Another camera angle. Daniel received the exact same message. Sir. We've upgraded your room. The room number was identical to mine. I covered my mouth. No. Daniel looked stunned. They deliberately placed us in the same suite. Neither of us had planned that night. Someone else had. But why? Chloe typed furiously. I've almost decrypted Adrian's private files. The progress bar reached 98%. 99. Suddenly, the screen went black. Every light in the mansion went out. Emergency alarms blared. The backup generator failed. Darkness swallowed the room. Then, a single gunshot echoed through the hallway. A scream followed. Grandfather. Daniel rushed toward the sound. When the lights flickered back on, his grandfather lay slumped beside his wheelchair. A crimson stain spread across his white shirt. With his last breath, the old man reached for Daniel's hand. Then he looked at me. His voice was barely audible. Don't trust. He coughed blood. The one. Another painful breath. Who saved you? His hand fell. His eyes closed. He was gone. Daniel stood frozen. I could barely breathe. The last clue had died with him. And his unfinished warning echoed in my mind. Don't trust the one who saved you. But who had he meant? Daniel, Chloe, or someone else entirely? The road to the Carter vineyard felt endless. Rain hammered against the windshield. Neither Daniel nor I spoke. For the first time, I was afraid of the answer. The old vineyard had been abandoned for years. When we arrived, the gates were already open. Inside, dozens of lights illuminated the warehouse. My uncle, Michael Carter, stood waiting. The man who had taught me to ride a bicycle. The man who had attended every graduation. The man I had called Dad after my father died. Beside him, my mother sat tied to a chair. Mom. I rushed forward. Stop. Michael calmly pointed a gun at her head. One more step. And she dies. I froze. Daniel quietly moved in front of me, shielding me with his body. Michael smiled. So this is the famous heir of the Ashford family. I expected someone less stubborn. Daniel's voice was icy. Let her mother go. Michael laughed. You sound exactly like your father. He walked slowly toward us. You both deserve to know the truth. 20 years earlier, my father, William Carter, and Daniel's father, Edward Ashford, had created a revolutionary clean energy technology. It would have changed the industry forever. But it would also destroy the profits of a secret group of powerful investors. They offered your fathers billions to bury the project, Michael said. They refused. So they were killed. Tears filled my eyes. You helped them. Michael lowered his head. Yes. I arranged the fake car accident. I told the police it was mechanical failure. I lied to your mother. I lied to you. Every word shattered another piece of my childhood. But why? I whispered. Michael closed his eyes. They threatened your mother. They threatened my own family. I was weak. I chose to save the people in front of me, instead of doing what was right. For a moment, I almost pitied him. Then he raised the gun again. But after 20 years, I can't let the truth come out. He aimed directly at Daniel. If the Ashford heir dies tonight, everything ends. Bang. The gun fired. Daniel shoved me aside. The bullet struck his shoulder. He staggered backward but stayed on his feet. Daniel. I ran to him, pressing my hands against the wound. Blood soaked through my fingers. He looked at me and somehow smiled. I told you. I'd protect you. Before Michael could fire again. Police sirens echoed across the vineyard. Red and blue lights flooded the darkness. Chloe stepped out of the lead vehicle with dozens of officers behind her. She held up a small device. I copied your confession. She smiled through tears. You forgot one thing, Uncle Michael. This entire conversation has been live-streamed to the police. Michael's face turned white. He slowly lowered the gun. For the first time in 20 years, he realized there was nowhere left to run. As officers handcuffed him, he looked at me one last time. I'm sorry, Evelyn. I loved you like my own daughter. I wiped away my tears. I believe you did. But love without honesty destroyed everything. He bowed his head and walked away in handcuffs. An ambulance rushed Daniel to the hospital. For 6 long hours, I waited outside the operating room. The same woman who once believed love was a weakness, now prayed for only one thing. Please, let him live. Finally, the surgeon stepped out. The surgery was successful. The bullet missed his heart by less than an inch. My knees gave way. I laughed and cried at the same time. For the first time in my life, I didn't care who saw me cry. Because I finally understood something my younger self never could. Success can build a company, but love can save a life. 6 months later, life had finally become quiet again. Michael Carter had pleaded guilty. The truth about both fathers' deaths was made public. Their names were finally cleared. The clean energy project they had dreamed of was restarted, this time, under a new partnership between Carter Group and Ashford Global. It was named Project Legacy. Not for profit, but for the 2 men who had given their lives protecting it. As for Daniel, he recovered completely. The scar on his shoulder remained, but he always joked. It reminds me that I made the right decision. I would roll my eyes every time. You almost got yourself killed. He would smile. And I'd do it again. I hated that answer. Because I knew he meant every word. People often asked if we started dating immediately. The answer was no. He resigned from Carter Group the day he left the hospital. I don't want anyone to say the CEO gave me special treatment. Instead, we met like ordinary people. Sometimes at a small cafe. Sometimes walking by the river. Sometimes eating street food where no one recognized us. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the CEO. I was simply Evelyn. And that was enough. 1 year later, Ashford Global hosted a charity gala celebrating the launch of Project Legacy. The ballroom glittered with crystal lights. Business leaders from around the world attended. I wore a midnight blue gown. Daniel, in a black tuxedo, still managed to steal every glance in the room. Halfway through the evening, the host suddenly smiled. Before tonight ends, we have one final presentation. The lights dimmed. A giant screen descended from the ceiling. I frowned. I didn't approve a presentation. Daniel looked unusually nervous. The video began. To my surprise, it wasn't about business. It was security footage. The hotel lobby. The night we first met. I laughed softly. Oh no. The guests watched as I stumbled after too much champagne. Daniel caught me before I fell. The room filled with warm laughter. Then another clip played. The elevator where he secretly stood between me and the crowd because he remembered my fear. Another clip. The anonymous coffee left outside my office. Another. The sandwich. The umbrella. The late night tea. Every quiet act of kindness I had never been able to thank him for. My vision blurred with tears. The final video showed Daniel speaking directly to the camera. If you're watching this, it means I've finally become brave enough. He smiled, exactly as he had on the night we met. Evelyn. I spent my whole life surrounded by people who admired my family name. But you never cared who I was. You challenged me. You argued with me. You believed in me. Even when the world didn't. The screen went dark. The ballroom became silent. I turned around. Daniel was no longer beside me. Instead, he was standing in the middle of the ballroom, holding a small velvet box. He walked toward me slowly. Then, he knelt on one knee. The entire room held its breath. Evelyn Carter, you once told me that love only distracted people from success. He smiled. I hope I've proven something different. Because every success in my life means nothing if I can't share it with you. He opened the box. Inside was a simple platinum ring. Not the largest. Not the most expensive. Just elegant. Just us. Will you marry me? I looked at him. Then at everyone watching. Years ago, I would have worried about my reputation. About the headlines. About what the board would think. Now, none of that mattered. Tears rolled down my cheeks as I laughed. I nodded. Yes. His eyes widened. Really? I laughed even harder. Daniel Hayes Ashford. If you make me repeat myself. Quote ... I'll change my mind. The ballroom erupted in applause as he slipped the ring onto my finger. Then he kissed me gently. Not because we were finally together. But because, after everything we had survived, we had finally found our way home. Epilogue. 3 years later. People often called us the most powerful couple in the business world. But our favorite place wasn't a boardroom. It was the quiet beach where everything had begun. One evening, as we watched the sunset, our little daughter ran across the sand, laughing. Daddy, Mommy. Daniel lifted her into his arms. She looked at us with curious eyes. How did you two meet? Daniel and I exchanged a smile. I laughed. It's a very long story. He kissed my forehead and finished the sentence for me. And it all started with one night that was supposed to mean nothing. I leaned my head against his shoulder. How wrong we had both been. Because that one night had become our forever.